Some houses have history, others have memories that refuse to fade. I never believed in hauntings. Not until we moved into the old farmhouse my father inherited, a place that looked peaceful from the outside, but hid something alive inside its walls. What began as a quiet new start became the longest nightmare of my life. This is the story of the crying in the walls on Midnight Hunt. When my father inherited the old farmhouse from my late uncle, we saw it as a blessing. A chance to leave the noisy city behind and start over in peace. The house sat on the edge of a small, forgotten village, surrounded by fields that rolled into a dark line of forest. It was beautiful in a lonely kind of way. Weathered white paint, creaking porch, and a tall chimney that leaned just a little too much to one side. I was 23 at the time. My younger sister Lily was 18, still in that dreamy stage where everything seemed exciting. My parents were thrilled to have fresh air and space. We arrived one mild spring afternoon with boxes, laughter, and the smell of dust and old wood. Inside, the place felt strange but not threatening. The living room was wide, with an old brick fireplace that hadn't been used in years. The wallpaper peeled in spots, and the floorboards moaned under every step. Yet, there was a quiet charm, like stepping into someone else's memories. We started unpacking immediately. I took the attic room, not out of bravery, but because I liked the view. You could see the fields stretch for miles, golden in daylight and silver at night. My parents took the main bedroom downstairs, and Lily chose the one beside the staircase. That first night, everything was calm. We were tired but content. Only one thing bothered me, a faint sound when I turned off the lights. It was like water trickling somewhere behind the walls. Not dripping exactly, more like whimpering. I brushed it off as pipes settling or the wind. The house was old. Old houses made sounds. Still, something about that soft noise felt too human, like someone quietly sobbing in another room. The next morning, I mentioned it at breakfast. Did anyone hear crying last night? Like really faint, coming from the walls. Mom, smiling, crying. Honey, you've been watching too many horror movies again. Dad, old pipes. We'll check the plumbing later. Don't let your imagination get started already. They laughed it off. Even Lily teased me about ghostly plumbing. I didn't push it. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just adjusting to a new environment. The days that followed were slow but pleasant. We painted, fixed broken hinges, and aired out the rooms. The house felt warmer with each day, until night came. At night, the sounds returned. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. A faint muffled crying that seemed to move, from one corner of the room to another. Sometimes it was behind my headboard. Other nights, it drifted near the window or down through the vents. One night I pressed my ear against the wall, expecting to hear wind or mice. But what I heard froze me. A soft, please, barely audible, almost imagined. But there, I jerked back and turned on the lamp. My heart hammered in my chest. The room was still, quiet, empty. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. By morning, I was exhausted. My parents noticed, but shrugged it off again. You're just nervous. This place takes getting used to. Mom, try sleeping with some music on, sweetheart. I didn't tell them about the voice. Not yet? One afternoon, as we were cleaning the basement, Lily called me over. She was brushing dust off an old section of wall where the plaster looked newer than the rest. Lily, weird, right? This part's been patched up. Different material, too. Me, maybe Uncle Sam had repairs done before he passed. Lily, yeah, maybe. We didn't think much of it then. But that wall, I'd later learn it was where everything began. That night, the crying returned, louder this time. Not distant, not muffled. And this time Lily heard it too. Lily, do you hear that? Yeah. Lily, it sounds like a woman. We stood there in the hallway, staring at each other, frozen. The sound seemed to come from inside the wall that separated our rooms. Slow, heavy sobs, like someone trying not to be heard. Dad came out of his room, irritated. Dad, what the hell's going on? Dad, there's someone. Dad, there's no one here! It's an old house. You two need to get some sleep. He checked the rooms, the attic, even outside. Nothing. No footprints, no open windows. No source. That was the first night the crying stopped before dawn, just as the sky turned pale gray. And that was when I started keeping notes. Times, sounds, patterns. Because something about that house didn't want to be ignored. For the next few nights, the house stayed eerily quiet. No crying, no whispers. Not even the creak of the floorboards that had once filled the silence. I wanted to believe it was over, that maybe the noises had just been old plumbing or rodents in the walls. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Lily and I tried to distract ourselves. We went into town, helped Dad repair the fence, and spent the evenings watching movies in the living room. The air was calm again, even comfortable. Until the fourth night, it started with a smell. A faint damp odor, like soil after rain, mixed with something metallic. I noticed it first in the hallway between our rooms. It came and went like a passing breeze, but every time it returned, it grew stronger. Mom said it was the old wood breathing. Dad said it was the pipes rusting. But I saw how Lily's face tightened every time that scent crept in. She smelled it too. That same night, I woke up to the sound of scratching. Slow, deliberate, steady. At first, it sounded like a rat in the wall, but then the pattern changed. 3 slow scratches. Pause. Then 2 quicker ones. Almost like someone tapping their fingernails across the inside of the plaster. I froze, staring at the wall in the dark. The scratching moved. Up, then sideways, then down, as though whoever or whatever it was searching for a way out. I whispered, "Hello." The sound stopped instantly. A silence so thick it felt like the entire house was holding its breath. Then, faintly, something shifted inside the wall. A soft thump, followed by what sounded like footsteps retreating across the attic floor above me. By morning, I was exhausted and jumpy. I told Dad again about the noises. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Dad, it's probably a raccoon. I'll set traps in the attic this weekend." "Me, Dad, this isn't an animal. It moves like..." "Dad, like what?" "A ghost." "Come on, you're smarter than that." He smiled, but his eyes didn't meet mine. He was pretending not to notice the unease creeping over all of us. That evening, the lights began flickering. Just briefly, a flicker here, a dim pulse there. The bulbs were new. The wiring, according to Dad, was fine. But it wasn't the lights themselves that bothered me. It was what I thought I saw in those brief flashes. Shadows. Not the ordinary kind. They seemed to linger for a heartbeat after the light returned. Like dark figures standing too close, then gone before I could focus. I caught one once in the reflection of the hallway mirror. Something tall and thin standing behind me, its shape swallowed in blackness. When I spun around, there was nothing, but the air behind me was cold. Lily started sleeping with her lamp on after that. 2 days later, Mom found something strange in the basement. We were clearing out old boxes when she discovered a small wooden door behind a shelf, barely large enough for a child to crawl through. The hinges were rusted, and it looked sealed from the inside. Dad said it probably led to an old crawlspace or storage area. Still, that door unsettled me. There was something about it. The way it sat flush against the foundation, with faint smudges around the edges, almost like fingerprints. That night, I woke to Lily's voice. "Lily, wake up. Please wake up." She stood at my door, trembling, her eyes wide. "Me, what happened?" "Lily, it's crying again." We stood in the hall together, listening. At first, nothing. Then, faint, muffled sobs. This time they came from below, near the basement door. Dad stormed out, annoyed. "Dad, no!" "I'm ending this right now." He grabbed a flashlight and marched downstairs. We followed a few steps behind, hearts pounding. The air was cold and damp, and the faint smell of soil was stronger than ever. He reached the basement and swept the light around. Empty. Dusty. Silent. Then the beam stopped on the far wall, the one near the little wooden door. For a second, it looked like something wet had seeped through the cracks. A dark, glistening patch that vanished when he moved closer. "Dad, just moisture. That's all." He shut the basement door hard on the way up. But when I passed it later, I heard something from behind it. A sound so faint I wasn't sure it was real. A whisper, close to the surface. "Help me." The next morning, the kitchen clock had stopped at exactly 3:07 a.m. Every clock in the house, actually. All frozen on the same time. We replaced the batteries, reset the time, and tried to laugh about it. But there was no denying it anymore. The house was changing. It wasn't just the sounds or the smells or the shadows. It was the feeling. The air itself felt heavier, like something unseen was pressing down on us. Even during the day, I started catching glimpses of movement in the corners of my eyes. And every night I heard that same faint sobbing again. Somewhere between the walls, too soft to be real, too human to be ignored. I began to wonder if Uncle Sam, my father's brother, had heard it too before he died alone in this house. And for the first time I thought, what if he didn't die naturally? Sleep stopped meaning rest. Every night I'd lie awake, waiting for the sound to begin. The slow sobbing, the scratching, the strange stillness that came before it. I started keeping the lamp on, notebook open, pen ready. At first, I wrote times and descriptions. Then I began writing please. Please stop. Please leave us alone. As if words on paper could reach whatever lived inside those walls. By the third week, the crying had become part of the house's rhythm. It came just after 2 a.m., moved through the rooms like a current. Sometimes I heard it in the vents, other nights behind the old plaster near the fireplace. Once, faintly, beneath the floorboards. Lily stopped making jokes about it. Mom started praying again. Dad refused to talk about it at all. One morning, I found him in the basement with the small wooden door open. The air pouring from it was cold and wet, like air from a cave. Me, you opened it, Dade. I wanted to prove there's nothing here. Me, and just dirt and stone. But I could see in his eyes that he wasn't sure. That night, the crying didn't come from the walls. It came from inside my room. I woke to the sound of soft breathing near my ear. Slow, shaky. Human. I turned the lamp on, hard hammering. The chair by the window rocked once, twice, then stilled. The curtain swayed though the window was closed. I whispered, "Who's there?" The air answered with a long exhale that wasn't mine. When morning came, I told my family. Mom's hand shook as she poured coffee. Mom, you're overtired, honey? We all are. Dad, no more talk of this. You hear me, we're not feeding it with attention. But silence didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. A few days later, Lily came to me pale and trembling. Lily, it touched me?
Me what?
Lily, something cold. I was half asleep and felt fingers on my arm. I thought it was Mom, but when I opened my eyes, nothing. Just cold air and that smell, like wet earth. That night, we both slept in the living room with every light on. At 20:17 a.m., the lights flickered out. The room fell into perfect blackness. From the direction of the fireplace came a slow dragging sound, something heavy moving across the brick. Then, faintly, a woman's voicey. "Why won't you help me?" Mom screamed. The power came back all at once, blinding. The room was empty, but ash from the unused fireplace was scattered across the rug, as if something had crawled out. Dad called an electrician the next day. The wiring checked out fine. No faults, no explanation. He stopped looking me in the eyes after that. I started researching the house. Old records at the village library. The property had belonged to several families, but none stayed long. The last entry under my uncle's name included a coroner's note, "Death due to heart failure. Discovered post-mortem after neighbors reported strange noises." No mention of anyone else. But the librarian, an older woman with shaky hands, leaned over when I asked about the farmhouse. "Librarian, you're living there. That place has got sorrow soaked into it. A woman went missing there long before your uncle bought it. Nobody found her. Folks said she used to cry every night after her child died." I drove home in silence, the road twisting through fields that looked lifeless in the dusk. When I got back, Mom was waiting on the porch. Pale as the moonlight. "Mom, it's crying again. In the daytime this time." Inside, the sound came from the kitchen wall, thin and distant, like a child whimpering. I pressed my ear to the plaster. "Please, it's cold." I stumbled back, heart racing. Lily clutched my arm. "Lily, did you hear that? It talked."
Say enough!
He shouted, slamming his fist against the wall. The crying stopped instantly. For a moment, the silence felt victorious. Then the temperature dropped. Our breath turned white. From deep inside the walls came a noise like something crawling, retreating deeper into the house. That night, dreams and waking began to blend. I'd close my eyes and see her, a woman with hollow cheeks and wet hair, her eyes swollen from endless weeping. She'd stand behind the plaster, palms pressed flat against it, whispering words I couldn't fully hear. Each morning I woke to new marks on the walls, thin streaks of moisture that looked like tears running down the paint. Mom tried to scrub them, but they always came back. One evening, while Dad was outside fixing the fence, the sobbing turned to wailing, loud, agonized, and unmistakably human. It filled the house like a storm. Mom fell to her knees praying. Lily clutched my hand. I ran to the basement door and shouted into the dark, "What do you want?" The reply came soft, close to my ear though I was alone at the threshold. "I want out." Something slammed the wooden door from the inside so hard the shelves rattled. I stumbled back, tripping over the steps. When Dad came running in, there was no sound, just the echo of my own breathing. He looked at me, really looked, maybe for the first time, and said quietly, "Dad, we should have never come here." From that night forward, the house no longer waited for darkness. The presence was awake at all hours, behind the walls, beneath the floors, in every reflection. And I started to realize it wasn't just crying to be heard. It began on a Friday night, the kind of night that feels heavier than it should. The air outside was thick and still, no wind, no crickets, just a quiet that pressed against the windows. Inside, we moved carefully, speaking in whispers, as if the house could hear us. Dad had made his decision earlier that evening. Dad, tomorrow we're leaving. I'll call a moving truck at first light. None of us argued. We'd stopped pretending things were normal. The crying had turned to moaning the past few nights, low and broken, echoing from every wall. Even during the day, we'd hear soft tapping, like fingernails tracing the inside of the plaster. We went to bed early. Clothes half packed, lights left on. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the clock to crawl past midnight. At 2:03 a.m., the first sound came, a hollow thump, like someone knocking from inside the walls near my bed. Then another, and another moving down the hallway. Lily, it's starting again. I ran out just as she stepped into the hallway. The air was icy. Our breaths showed. From the living room came a faint sobbing, then the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing slowly back and forth. Mom, Sam? Dad? Stay where you are. He grabbed the flashlight and headed toward the stairs. I followed despite his warning. Each step creaked under our weight. Halfway down, the sobbing stopped. Silence. Then, from the basement below us, a scream ripped through the house. It wasn't one of ours. It was a woman's scream, raw, desperate, rising and falling like she was being pulled underwater. Mom shrieked upstairs. Lily started crying. Dad charged toward the basement door and yanked it open. Cold, wet air poured out, carrying that smell again, earth and iron. He aimed the flashlight into the darkness, his hands shaking. The beam caught the small wooden door at the far wall. It was moving, not rattling, breathing. The wood flexed in and out like lungs gasping for air. Dad, back upstairs! Now! But I couldn't move. My feet were rooted to the steps. I watched frozen, as the door bulged outward once more and cracked along the hinges. From inside came a slow, dragging sound, followed by a low moan that seemed to vibrate through the foundation. The light flickered, then went out completely. For a heartbeat, we stood in total darkness. Then came the cries, dozens of them, filling every wall, every vent, every inch of the house. Men, women, children. Wailing, whispering, pleading all at once. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with the noise. I covered my ears but could still feel the sound inside my skull. Mom stumbled down the stairs, screaming my name. Dad tried to reach her, but something unseen knocked him aside. He hit the wall with a sickening thud. Lily ran toward me, clutching a candle she'd lit upstairs. The small flame revealed streaks of moisture running down the walls, dark, thick, almost red. The crying turned to laughter, high, sharp, and wrong. From the corner of my eye, I saw shapes pressing against the plaster, like hands trying to push through from the other side. Fingers outlined beneath the wallpaper. Faces forming and dissolving. Lily, make it stop! Please make it stop! Dad pulled himself up, blood on his forehead, and shouted, Dad, get out! Everyone out, now! We ran for the front door, but it slammed shut before we reached it. The lock turned by itself with a metallic snap. Windows followed, each one slamming as if the house were sealing itself shut. The crying rose into screams again. I could feel vibrations through the floorboards, like something massive crawling beneath us. The lights exploded one by one, showering sparks. Lily clung to me, trembling violently. Then everything went still. No sound, no movement. Only the candles flicker lighting our faces. From behind us came a whisper, soft, broken, right between us. Don't leave me here. We turned. The small wooden door from the basement stood wide open. Inside was only darkness, but the cold pouring from it was unbearable. In the faint light, I saw the shape of a woman, pale, soaked in shadows, her face streaked with endless tears. Her mouth moved slowly, words caught between sobs. He locked me in, he left me here. Before I could speak, she reached toward us. Her hand thin and gray, fingers stretching unnaturally long. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. I remember screaming Lily's name, feeling her hand slip from mine. The air filled with shrieks and rushing wind. Something yanked my hair, dragged me backward across the floor. I kicked and fought until my hand hit the door handle. I pulled with everything I had. The front door flew open. Cold night air flooded in, carrying the sound of crying behind it. I fell out onto the porch as Dad and Mom stumbled after me, dragging Lily, who was limp but breathing. From outside, the house looked normal. Quiet, still, almost peaceful. But from inside came one last, drawn-out wail that faded into silence. Then nothing. We didn't go back for our things. We drove away barefoot, half-dressed, not saying a word. When the house disappeared in the rear-view mirror, I thought it was over. But as the car bounced down the dirt road, I could have sworn I heard it. Faint and distant, coming from the back seat. A single shuddering sob. We never went back to the farmhouse. Not once. The morning after that night, we drove until the fields gave way to highway and the sun burned through the fog. None of us spoke. Lily kept staring out the window, her face pale, her lips trembling like she was still hearing something. Mom clutched the Bible so tightly it left marks in her hands. Dad just drove, eyes fixed forward, jaw locked. We stopped at a roadside diner hours later. None of us were hungry, but Dad wanted to make a call. To the police, to explain what exactly? That our house screamed at us, that something came out of the walls? He never made the call. He stood at the payphone for a long time, receiver pressed to his ear, then came back to the table and said quietly, "Dad, they wouldn't believe us. They'd think we lost our minds." He wasn't wrong. We checked into a cheap motel that night. The bed smelled of smoke, the walls were paper thin, but it felt safer than silence. I thought sleep would come easily after everything. It didn't. The quiet here was too deep, too clean, like the world had turned its back on us. At around 20:30 a.m., I heard Lily's voice. "Lily, do you hear it?" I sat up. "Me hear what?" "Lily, the crying. It's faint, but it's here." We sat there in the dark, holding our breath. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, faintly, like wind under the door, a soft sobbing. Just once. Mom jolted awake at the sound. She started to pray. Dad grabbed his car keys and said, "Dad, pack your things. We're leaving." We drove again before dawn. Days blurred after that. We stayed with relatives in another town for a while. Dad found a small house to rent. Mom kept the curtains drawn all the time. Lily stopped talking. She wouldn't go near walls anymore. Always sat in the middle of rooms, as far from the edges as possible. For a while, we tried to live normally. We told people the farmhouse was infested with black mold, an excuse that explained the rush, the fear, the missing belongings. But we never mentioned what really happened. Still, the house didn't let us go. It began with sounds. Tiny ones. In the middle of the night, I'd hear faint tapping in the walls again, soft, rhythmic, like fingers brushing plaster. I'd wake up and stare at the paint, whispering to myself that it was nothing. But deep down, I knew the rhythm. I'd memorized it. 3 slow scratches. Pause. 2 quick ones. The same pattern I'd heard that first night in the farmhouse. One morning, I found Lily sitting in the hallway facing the wall. "Me, Lily. What are you doing?" "Lily, she's back." "Me, ooh." "Lily, the woman in the walls. She followed us." I felt my stomach twist. "Me, Lily, don't, Lily. She just wants to be heard." That afternoon, Mom called a priest. He came by, said a few prayers, sprinkled holy water, and told us to let go of the fear. He left before sundown. That night, the house was silent again. For the first time in weeks, I thought maybe it worked. Until 3:07 a.m. The lights flickered. A picture frame fell from the wall, shattering on the floor. When I looked down, the photo inside, our family photo, had split clean across Lily's face. The crying started up again, louder than before. Not just one voice this time, but several, layered and distant, coming from behind every wall. "Mom, why won't it stop?" "Dad, get in the car." We tried, but Lily didn't move. She stood in the hallway, eyes wide, staring at the walls. "Lily, listen." "It's not angry anymore." I grabbed her arm. She wouldn't budge. The sobbing turned to whispers now, low and childlike, repeating one phrase over and over. "He locked me in, he locked me in." And then another voice, faint but male, joined it. "I told you to be quiet." The sound of a door slamming echoed through the house. Not ours. One buried deep within the walls. Lily screamed and collapsed. We carried her out to the car and didn't stop driving until sunrise. That was 2 years ago. We've moved 3 times since. Dad doesn't speak much anymore. He keeps tools in the garage but never fixes anything. Says the sound of hammering reminds him of that night. Mom still prays every evening. Lily's in therapy. She says she's better now, though she won't stay in a room alone for long. As for me, I can't sleep without music playing. Silence feels wrong now, like it's waiting to fill itself with something else. A few months back, curiosity got the better of me. I searched the farmhouse's address online. The new owners had posted photos. They'd renovated it completely. Fresh paint, new floors, new walls. But one picture caught my attention. The living room wall near the fireplace had been stripped down during repairs. And beneath the plaster, they'd found something. A wooden beam marked with faint, uneven scratches. 3 slow lines. Pause. Too quick. I closed my laptop and haven't opened that folder again. Sometimes when I'm half asleep, I think I hear her. That faint, broken crying. Not from the walls anymore, but from somewhere closer. Somewhere inside me. Like the sound followed me long after the house was gone. Maybe that's what she wanted all along. Not to escape, but to be remembered. To live through the ones who hurt her. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see her face pressed against the walls of my mind, her lips moving, her voice trembling, and every night at 3:07 she whispers, "You heard me once. Don't stop listening." Some houses don't haunt you by keeping you inside. They haunt you by finding a way out. Thank you for listening to the crying in the walls. If you hear someone weeping behind your walls tonight, don't answer. You never know who's been waiting to be heard. Subscribe my channel for next story